You know, I'm not a monster, not a bad person. I done a bad thing.
The state said you and Roberson were lovers, and that when you felt jilted, you lashed out by setting the fire. You say it was a cry for help and a way to escape a desperate situation, an abusive situation.
A live-in babysitter sets the house ablaze and then escapes, killing 4 young children and their parents.
I did it. I struck that match and I set that fire. But it wasn't to kill anybody. It wasn't. Those innocent babies.
Michael, Dale, Gary, and Rita, all choked to death by that smoke in terror.
I ran to the bedroom and I told him the house is on fire. God help me. I tried to get them out.
Almost 50 years later, Indiana's longest-serving female inmate, Sarah Cindy White, answers for setting that fatal fire and saving herself.
You got yourself out the window.
I fell out. I'm assuming White can't remember.
How do you explain the fact that you remember everything up to then and then everything after?
I can't explain it. I really can't.
3 psychiatrists told the court that you're a pathological liar. You lied on the polygraph you took. You lied at the sentencing. You lied about setting the fire.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But am I lying today? No.
I set the house afire, not meaning to kill anybody. God knows I didn't mean to kill him.
Now, she's making accusations of her own and pointing the finger at one of her victims.
He says, if you run or try to get away from me, he says, I will drive by and I will kill her.
But the only evidence is her own word.
Would you believe you?
Yes.
Would you forgive you?
No.
Would you free you?
That's a good question.
I'm just outside Indianapolis, heading to meet a woman who's been in prison for longer than most Americans have been alive. And yet, a half-century of incarceration isn't enough to live down her one and only crime, the murders of a family of 6 by arson. Now, more than anything, Sarah Cindy White says she just wants to be believed. With growing calls to release Indiana's longest-serving female inmate, White has a controversial story to tell.
Thank you, guys.
I want to hear her out and get a glimpse into the mind of this convicted murderer. Once a known liar, can she ever be believed?
We're really here to understand the mindset and motivations behind your actions so long ago. It's my job to embody the skepticism of the viewer. I have a duty to probe the way you would want me to if you were on the other side of the TV trying to figure out what to think. Does that make sense?
Yes.
White is 67 years old, wheelchair-bound and frail.
Why are you here today talking to us, Cindy?
And there's also a unique sensitivity at play that calls for a gentle tact.
I'm here today because there are little Cindys out there going through what I went through. And if they hear my story and they can find other ways to handle the situation that I did, they don't have to end up in here.
White says her story begins with child sexual abuse.
It happened to you at a time when most victims suffered in silence,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I lived the abuse that my father gave me, from being a daddy's girl to being daddy's special little girl. And that's when the secret started.
That's also when the damage started.
Yes. It just went too far to where his hand was going up my shorts. And that just was not right. But I loved him. That was my dad at the age of 8. He says, this is our little secret.
White says her father's home was a living hell, and she began inventing ways to avoid it.
The brain is wired to cope. And at one point you took to pretend fainting.
The weekends were horrible. You know, the cyclone would happen in the house and he would just, and I was like, I can't do it, you know, to have a tooth knocked out and, you know, it was just one thing after another. It got to the point that around Friday,
Yeah.
I would either be delivering my newspapers or something like that, and my last newspaper would be delivered, and I knew what I had to go home to. And it just got to the point that I would make myself fall.
And it happened on Friday to avoid the weekend terror.
You know, I was faking falling off my bike. One day I fell and my leg was actually numb. I couldn't feel a thing. And later on, they diagnosed it as hysterical paralysis.
Around 16, it got so bad that you were institutionalized for almost a whole year.
Yeah, for 10 months.
They diagnosed you for an extreme stress condition known as conversion reaction, basically a psychological injury with physical manifestations.
They never explained that to me.
There was also a diagnosis that you had a tendency to exaggerate and distort facts.
Yeah.
It says that she has marked difficulty in telling straightforward stories. Does that ring true to you? Does that make sense to you?
It does make sense. But I've never heard this before.
All of this is from the case record.
You're right. You're
It
right.
sounds like a compulsion. Do you think that that's a coping mechanism that your brain sort of devised to somehow reconcile the world that you lived in?
It could. That's very, very, very possible.
Is that still something that you want to do at times? Could that be part of the lasting damage you've sustained, that sometimes your mind, bends what happens in order to protect yourself emotionally?
No, nothing like that now. In fact, I'm a very straightforward person.
It's also totally relevant to the case because it cuts against your credibility, right?
As she was coming of age, White languished in a psychiatric hospital. But one local family had become a saving grace, the Robersons.
You had already met the Robersons.
Yes, I met them on my paper route.
So they watched you grow up in a way.
Yeah. And in fact, they would ask me to babysit a couple of times.
She says Charles and Carol Roberson had even taken her in as a younger teen, when she needed safe harbor from her own family, and she would help care for their 4 young children.
At that point, by all appearances, they seemed like well-meaning, decent folk.
Yeah, they were. It was fun. And it was just wonderful. And that's when I started fantasizing of Charlie, because he was being kind to me. He was, you're pretty. Look at you. You are a really pretty woman, and I have never been told that. And so therefore, I was infatuated with him.
How old were you at that point?
I was 15.
That's where the romantic feelings
Yeah,
started.
they did.
Even before you were institutionalized.
Yes, yes.
They kept in touch with you when you went to LaRue.
They did. They would come see me.
They would even come visit. Really?
Yes.
White says she was finally released from the psychiatric hospital just as she was turning 18, and soon landed in the one place she'd felt safe, the Roberson home. By then, according to investigators, White and Charles Roberson were exchanging these sexually charged letters. October 1975, the month she moved in. She tells him, "I wish I could have you all to myself. and that she wants him to be her first. He writes her, "You're at a legal age when you can have sex with me with no problem."
Did you fall in love with him?
In a child's mind, yeah.
You
In an
were,
adult mind, no.
you were 18 at that point.
I was still a child. I was so damaged. And he would flirt with me and he would tell me things that everybody wants to hear.
Can you describe it to me, what you felt for Mr. Roberson?
I got excited when I seen him. I would giggle when he would say something, and as I think back now, it would be just, a kid thing. I didn't want sex really at the time. I just wanted someone to tell me I was pretty, to tell me that I amounted to something more than a piece of ass.
You wanted love.
Yeah, something that I've never received other than from the kids.
Is it possible, in your damaged mind at the time, that you were over-interpreting some of these things that he would say?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
And then, according to you, things suddenly get very dark.
Yeah.
White alleges both Charles and Carol Roberson became her lovers and then her captors.
It first started off with he got porn. The three of us sat there and I sat and picked with my fingers and they kept telling me, look up at the screen.
Both of them.
Yes. It was to the point that I didn't know what else to do.
But did it never cross your mind, Cindy, that if I light this match, I could kill everyone in the house?
I didn't contemplate on it that long.
As a teenager, Cindy White was committed to a psychiatric hospital and diagnosed as prone to distort and fabricate facts. Mental illness she attributes to an abusive childhood home. So after being released from the hospital, she turned 18 and took refuge with a local couple for whom she used to babysit, the Robersons. You've described two very different experiences in their home.
Yes.
Right? You said, oh, if I could imagine what Disneyland would be like, that would be it because I was so loved.
Yeah, I felt it. The kids, oh my, they were just, there's Aunt Cindy, there's Aunt Cindy. And I mean, they would come running. They'd see me coming on my bike.
The four of them.
The four, and you know how puppies are when they see you and they're like jumping up and down, wanting to be
So
up.
excited.
That's exactly what I got.
Wow.
And I loved every bit of it.
The Robersons' young children, Michael, Dale, Gary, and Rita, had known White for most of their young lives as a trusted babysitter.
What were your duties? What did you...
I would help Carol clean. Carol was a clean freak. She. Sorry.
It's okay. Take a minute. Some tissue here.
I love those kids.
You need a minute? We can take as much time as you need.
Please,
Yeah,
just
sure.
for a second.
Sure. All right.
The kids, we would go, the school wasn't very far from the house, and I would take them at least once a day. That was their little reward for being good. And we would go and play on the recess
Playground.
activities, yeah.
Yeah.
And we play in the sprinkler before it got too cold. And, little kid stuff.
But White says soon after she arrived, the Robersons' home somehow transformed from a safe haven into a hellhole.
And then, according to you, things suddenly get very dark.
Yeah. It first started off with he got porn. Charlie would say, come and watch this with me. And I said, I don't want to see that. And he grabbed me. And he grabbed me hard. He said, yes, you are. You're going to sit here and watch it.
White's account of this 3-month-long stay with the Robersons describes a litany of outlandish horrors and abuse, now impossible for her victims to refute.
And I'm like, Carol will die if she hears of this. And then one day she walks in and she says, "What you doing?" And she said, "Oh, you're watching porn." And so she sat down and the three of us sat there and I sat and picked with my fingers and they kept telling me, "Look up at the screen."
Both of them.
Yes. And so then Charlie decided he wanted to make some movies,
Pornographic movies.
pornographic movies.
Was Carol in on that too?
It was Carol and I that he made. And that was my first lesbianism experience.
I see. You say he invited other sexual partners to join in.
Yeah.
Who were they?
People that he knew. In fact, I myself thought I'd seen a couple of them on the police force.
Investigators later concluded that White and Charles Roberson were having a consensual affair, but found no evidence to corroborate her claims of abuse.
There's also a story about forcing you to have sex with an animal.
A dog. He wanted to videotape it. And he dictated exactly what it was that I was supposed to do. I was supposed to allow the dog to lick me.
The family pet?
Yeah, he was a family pet.
I take the issue of sexual abuse very seriously. And it is not my practice to question the accounts of victims. You obviously have no reason to lie about what happened in your home with your father. However, you do have a reason to lie about the Robersons. They were among your murder victims, and the worse you can make them look, the more sympathy and consideration you might get. Is that fair?
It's fair what you're saying, but it's not, no, it's not the truth. I would not rake someone's name through the coals like that. I would not falsely accuse anybody of anything, especially something of that nature.
Obviously, they're not here to defend or
I know,
speak for themselves.
I know that.
Right? Nor do we have any other information that implicates them in wrongdoing apart from your own accusations that came many years after the fact. At no point between your arrest and a decade or so later did you ever note for the record or even tell your own attorneys about the abuse by the Robersons.
I clammed up. I was scared. I was ashamed.
You also say there were some very brutal acts of intimidation, including a chilling story about a kitten.
Kitten, yes, the kitten.
What happened there?
I said, I'm gonna go see my grandmother. And he said, you're not going anywhere. And he grabbed me and he pushed me against the wall, and the kids are screaming. And so he let go of me and he went out and got the kitten. He said, I'm gonna show you what I'm about. And he said, and jerked the head off.
What do you mean? He literally removed the head from the
kitten was
body?
like this. He had the kitten like this. He took the head and he ripped it and he pulled the head off the kitten. It was horrible. And that was one of the first times that I ran.
White says to prevent her from leaving the home, Charles Roberson threatened to murder her sister, who lived nearby.
He takes me down my grandmother's street. And my baby sister, which is Christy, she's 4. She's out in the front yard, she's playing. And he says, if you run or try to get away from me, he says, I will drive by and I will kill her. And I believed him. I mean, look what he did to the cat. And I said, I wasn't coming over here. And he said, yes, you were. And he slapped me, he backhanded me.
This is a man who,
I loved.
along with his wife.
Yes, who I felt safe with. But it just started, I mean, everything just started unraveling.
These explicit letters were found by investigators dated during the first 2 months of White's stay with the Robersons. In them, she makes no reference to any problems apart from Charles's marriage. Still, White now claims that during the third and final month she lived with the family, She was desperate for a way out. That's when, she says, late one night, a dangerous idea came to her.
So I go on to bed, and then we get the phone call in the middle of the night. It's your grandmother's house caught on fire, but they all got out and everybody's okay. And I said, that's it. If I set a small fire, one to smoke it up to where everybody gets out, I can leave.
So, by your account, all this leads up to New Year's Eve, right? December 31st, 1975. Cindy, in as much detail as you can remember after all these years, tell me what happened that night.
On New Year's Eve, 1975, an 18-year-old live-in babysitter crouched beside the family Christmas tree with a matchbook and a terrible idea. Asleep in their bedrooms were Charles and Carol Roberson and their 4 small children, Michael, Dale, Gary, and Rita.
New Year's Eve, right? December 31st, 1975. Now, this is going back 50 years or so. How much can you remember about that period?
I remember everything.
You do?
I do. I've got a very good memory as far as that goes.
Cindy, in as much detail as you can remember after all these years, tell me what happened that night.
It was below freezing, it's snowing, and we had went shopping, and I had gotten a pair of the footy pajamas. We had all gotten some throughout the day. And I had those on, and I got ready to unplug the Christmas tree because they had went on to bed. And I said, that's it. If I set a small fire, one to smoke it up to where everybody gets out, I can leave.
At that point, that you're so desperate, you're about to light the house on fire.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have been better to just walk out the door and take your chances?
I couldn't take my chances with my family because he showed me what he was doing. He showed me what he was about. And I prayed to God before I struck that match. And I said, God, if this is your will, let it happen. But if it's not your will, please don't let it happen.
That's not really how God works, is it?
Now I know that. I know that now. When I struck that match and it went up the walls so fast, I ran to the bedroom and I got Charlie and I told him the house is on fire. God help me. We went to Gary and Sissy's room and I got them, and Carolyn went to the back bedroom and she got in there and I had Gary and Sissy and they pulled away from me and the smoke was so thick that I couldn't find them. So we go in the bedroom, and Carol tells me to open the window, and it was a larger window, and I tried opening it, and it wouldn't. It just wouldn't, and the smoke was, everybody was just... And she told me to get up on the top bunk because there was this high window. And she said, I'm going to hand you the kids. Open it, and I'm going to hand you the kids.
Were the kids all there in the room at that point?
I couldn't find Gary and Sissy because the smoke was too thick. So I got up on the top bunk, and the next thing I know is I'm laying on the ground, and I don't know how I got out.
Your memory fails.
I don't know how I got out.
Right at that point, you remember everything up to that
yes,
point.
and I want to know how I got out because it was a small window. I tried to get them out.
You got yourself out the window.
I fell out. I'm assuming. This is what I'm assuming. I don't know for a fact. I don't know. I can't remember.
How do you explain the fact that you remember everything up to then and then everything after that?
I can't explain it. I really can't. The last thing I remember is I was on the top of the bunk,
Right.
opening this window. And then I'm laying on the ground and I'm hearing these sirens and things like that, and I'm thinking it's a bad dream.
Was there a moment at which you realized, oh my God, what have I done?
Yes, I did.
I was like, oh my God, they're still in there. Yes, I did. I was like, my God, what happened? What happened? I kept trying to get back in the house. I kept trying to go up there and get in the house, and they wouldn't let me, and they left me standing there.
The neighbors had to restrain you.
Yes.
It was a lost cause at that point. Were you, at that point, racked with the feeling, I'm responsible for this?
No, I didn't, not until I was in the hospital and I had a chance to just put things together. At that point in time, no.
Prosecutors later argued that White set the fire when she felt jilted by Charles Roberson, then immediately abandoned the house and the family to burn. White insists that's not true.
There is no way that I set the fire and I ran around the house because I wanted to get rid of him. I wanted help. I wanted to try to remove the house so I could leave. I did not intentionally do it to hurt anybody.
Let's take a minute.
I wish to God it had never happened. But if it happened, I wish it could have been in this day and time, because it would have never happened, because people would have known the right questions to ask. And I'm not blaming them, but I am, because I done what I only thought was right. And how could I say setting a fire was right? Because it was to the point that I didn't know what else to do.
Did it never cross your mind, Cindy, that if I light this match, I could kill everyone in the house?
I didn't contemplate on it that long. I really and truly, David, I really and truly 100% believed that they were getting out.
How could you believe that?
Because I thought that I could get them out. Excuse me, but I'm up here. It's up. I know it is. And it's hard to believe that. I have no reason to lie right now. I have nothing. I'm doing life.
After the blaze was extinguished, White pretended to be the miraculous sole survivor of a Christmas tree fire. Then, arson investigators found evidence of an accelerant, and she was charged and convicted of murder in 1977, all the while maintaining her innocence.
In fact, for the first decade or so of your sentence, you still denied the crime.
I did, because I was ashamed. I don't want to admit that I've killed, 6 people by accident. That is horrible.
That's a long time to,
Yes.
to lie about it. Do you think your past excuses the murders?
No.
Do you think your past trauma explains the murders?
In a sense, it shows how damaged from the age of 8 to the age of 18. If none of this had happened and none of this, I was never damaged, I don't know what my life would have been.
Isn't it fair that the court set aside all of the things that you point to as kind of mitigating factors? Your trauma, your youth, your hardship, for the purpose of rendering a judgment,
Yeah.
guilty or not guilty.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
Yeah. I said that the prosecutor done a good job because he done his job.
You were legally an adult. We're all responsible for what we do.
Yes.
3 psychiatrists evaluated you during the trial and told the court that you're a pathological liar. With your record of lying and distortion, how can we believe you?
She's had a lot of years to think about this and to think what would sell.
Johnson County, Indiana prosecutor Lance Hamner represents the people of his jurisdiction, including 6 members of a family burned to death when Cindy White intentionally set a house fire 50 years ago. He says White's belated claims that she was being abused in the home are calculated to garner sympathy.
I think there's been a lot of concern about sexual abuse of young people, but we don't see any evidence of that having happened here. What we see is that there was an affair going on, and it looks to me like she was angry when that affair ended. She could have walked away. She didn't walk away. Setting fire to a house with a bunch of sleeping people in it is not going to get you out any better than if you just simply walked away and called the police. It took her 10 years to come up with this story, and it seems awfully convenient that you've killed off the only two people who could rebut that.
So hard. And I'm like, if one person would say, Cindy, I believe you.
I feel sympathy for you, but I still don't know what to think because there's been, along the way, a lot of lying, Cindy. Consistently, it harkens back to that diagnosis, the propensity to distort and lie and exaggerate. 2 years before the fire, the police said they had a lot of problems with you, including 21 emergency calls involving you in 1973 alone. One officer said about you, she had to be the center of attention. She's a con artist and one of the best I've seen.
I had to be the center of attention to stay away from my home. I was faking falling off my bike so I could stay in the hospital, so I didn't have to go home.
Those are the incidents?
Yes.
I see. 3 psychiatrists evaluated you during the trial and told the court that you're a pathological liar. The most sympathetic one, Dr. Schuster, noted that this was a coping mechanism and a character trait. Part of her personality is that she's a liar, he said. Many of her distortions of the truth are defensive in nature and are based in fantasy. You lied on the polygraph you took. You lied at the sentencing, pleading your innocence in a dramatic outburst. The state said you and Roberson were lovers, and that when you felt jilted, you lashed out by setting the fire. You say it was a cry for help and a way to escape a desperate situation, an abusive situation. Either way, an entire family was slaughtered. With your record of lying and distortion, from a time perhaps when you were a different person, how can we believe you?
I can't give you a pill to do it. There's not enough time to try to convince you. What I can say is this. I have no reason to lie. Back then, yeah, I did. I did. I lied about falling off my bike. But am I lying today? No.
You lied about setting the fire for a long time.
Yes,
right?
I did. Yes, I did.
And then you finally confessed your crime.
Yeah.
That's a long time to lie about something so consequential.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you account for that?
Maybe if I lied and let him believe that it was the Christmas tree, then maybe I could get out.
To get out? You lied to get out?
Yeah. I wanted my freedom because I couldn't tell the truth right then, the whole truth.
10 years into her prison sentence, White admitted that she did in fact intentionally set the fire.
You do confess. Why?
It was to the point that I just couldn't live with it. I got so tired of the lies because I couldn't keep them straight. I couldn't keep them straight. And from that day forward, I have never told another lie. When I admitted to setting the fire, and I knew that this is where I'm going to stay. This is, until I take my last breath.
I set the house afire, not meaning to kill anybody.
God knows I didn't mean to kill him. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
If I could bring back those lives, I would.
You've publicly expressed remorse, you've publicly apologized, you've publicly begged forgiveness from your fallen victims.
Yes.
There is one thing you've never done. You've never accepted your punishment. How many appeals and clemency applications have you made?
A lot. A lot.
I count at least 10 between 1978 and 2016. What does that say about your contrition or remorse?
When I became prosecutor in the 1990s, there was a petition for clemency that was filed by Sarah White, and we opposed it. My job as prosecutor is to speak on behalf of the people of the state of Indiana, our residents, and for the dead victims who can't speak for themselves.
Lance Hamner has been a prosecutor and judge in Indiana for 35 years. And throughout that time, Sarah Cindy White has been trying to get out of prison.
She set a fire knowing that they were asleep. Think about that for a minute. She set a fire in a house knowing that they were asleep, 4 little children in that house, and they all burned to death. I don't see how anybody gets clemency for that.
You've made an admirable life for yourself in prison. 4 semesters of college at Martin, a GED, you're a licensed cosmetologist, certified in health occupations, certified in accounting, certified in business math. You've learned sign language.
Yes.
You tutor deaf people.
Yes.
You are certified in blood pressure technology.
Yes.
You've also, on a regular basis, engaged in various treatments and therapies, right? Survivor 1, 2, and 3, incest survivors group, grief group, anger group, one-on-one therapy. Are these, in your mind, part of your atonement, acts of contrition, remorse, expressions of remorse?
Yeah.
How so?
In order for me to move on, because I'll never forgive myself, I do all these things that you listed to try to make a difference in someone else's life, to show them, to tutor them, to help someone.
Service to others.
Yeah. I wish I'd died instead of them. I do. And it's not the fact because I'm here. It's not. It's because, especially the kids, those innocent babies, if I could give my life for this, I would.
7-year-old Michael. 6-year-old Dale. 5-year-old Gary. And Rita, who was just 4. All choked to death by that smoke and terror.
If I could give my life for this, I would.
Doesn't matter.
I'd probably done better if I'd got. I know it doesn't matter because they can't come back, and it doesn't make it. It doesn't lighten the fact what I did.
Cindy, if anyone else had lit that fire and hurt them, what sentence would you give them?
Life.
Forfeit their freedom forever.
Yeah, not on death row because that's too easy.
That's too easy.
Too easy. They need to live with it every single day, just like I do. The prison I'm in is not here on Girls School Road. The prison I'm in is, and I want that. I want this help because this is what I deserve.
You've publicly expressed remorse, you've publicly apologized, you've publicly begged forgiveness from your fallen victims.
Yes.
There is one thing you've never done. You've never accepted your punishment. How many appeals and clemency applications have you made?
A lot.
I count at least 10 between 1978 and 2016. As early as 1978, you've been trying to get out after doing, what, a couple of years. So what does that tell us about your remorse?
I could still have remorse and wonder what freedom is about. Remorse is accepting and grieving and dreading the thought of what you did.
There are people who think that you should be released, not more than a few, who think that you've served your time.
I'm doing this interview to try to help people. I'm doing this interview to stop someone before they act like I did.
There are also people who believe that you do something like this, you should forfeit your freedom forever. You told me the same thing a few minutes ago,
Yes.
right? Would you believe you if you were a third party looking on to the story?
Right today?
Yeah.
Yes.
You would?
Yes.
Would you forgive you?
No.
Would you free you?
That's a good question. A part of me wants to say yes, and a part of me wants to say no. Because I don't deserve it.
What's the part of you that wants to say yes?
To have something I've never had.
What is that something? How would you put it?
Freedom.
Freedom.
There's still a part of me that would love to go home, to at least die outside of these prison walls. Not to die alone.
As I left the interview and drove away from the prison, I turned my back on a woman filled with lies, regrets, and pain. She told me she was still contemplating one last bid for clemency in what is now her 50th year of incarceration. Whether or not she's ever released, Cindy White will have to live and die with the burden of the 6 lives she took in that fateful decision a lifetime ago.